Namaste. Welcome to Asamanya, Ordinary People in Ordinate Journey. I'm your host and host Smita Iyengar, connecting to you from Finland. So today on Asamanya, who do we have? We have a person who used to be a software engineer, then he quit the job, and then he got into something called coaching industry, and then he's a writer, he's a fellow podcaster, and a good friend of mine. So today we have on Asamanya Sunil Sathyendra. So Sunil Sathyendra, welcome to the show. Welcome to Asamanya.
Thank you. Namaskara.
So, Sunil, I have given a brief introduction about you to the audience, saying that you were a software
hmm
engineer and then, you got into coaching and then you are a fellow podcaster and you are also a writer, a poet, and you have a very interesting, a pen name, which I did not reveal yet. So, would you like to do the honors?
Yes. So, my pen name is Pungidasa. So, for those who are from Karnataka, I think their ears will now get perked up, saying, "Hey, what is this guy talking about?"
Yeah.
So, it's a beautiful evolution into that pen name. So, I was initially basically for people who don't know what pungi means. Pungi is actually a snake charmer's instrument. So, a snake charmer uses the pungi to actually work with the snake and charm the snake.
Mm.
And so for me, that was the first thing that people gave me a title initially because I used to call a lot of people and prank them with different voices. Right? And it was before Truecaller and all those places where people know who is calling.
Mm.
And so that is when the playful aspects of it came along. And that's where Pungi came into existence. But I was also a very huge fan of Kanakadasa, who's one of the strongest of saints in the whole saint culture, or Dasa culture. Right,
Yeah.
and I was very strongly influenced by one of his songs, and and that's where it sort of came along. The first few times I used that name, got very popular. It was very eye catchy, and over the years, it's also taken a new explanation.
Mm.
So Pungi or the snake is not charmed by the sound of the
True.
instrument, but rather the movement. So usually there are always two meanings to whatever I am representing in my poem: the literal and the deeper. So that's also what it's moved on to in that space.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. That's
that's the
quite
charm of the new name, the pen name.
Right. That's quite interesting, actually, Sunil. So, I was just wondering, I just mentioned that you were a software engineer and then you moved on to coaching and then you moved on to writing. So, is it because, like everybody else, your parents said engineering first and then everything else later, or?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes, and to a certain extent, no. Right. So I am possibly the second engineer in the family. So rest of all been into business, teaching, possibly into commerce, or anything outside of engineering. Only the second guy. My uncle is into civil, but that was a very long time ago. My father's brother. So basically, yeah, he was into civil. That was a long time ago. When I came into the picture, typically like everybody else, there's only two choices: either you become a doctor or an engineer. And I really wanted to explore the commerce part of it, but it never got there because they're like you're too brilliant a fellow. Chalo, you go finish your engineering.
Yeah.
And engineering did happen. And in engineering was my first entry into my first love story in life was with engineering, not with engineering subjects, but typically with poetry. So poetry was found in the second semester of my engineering. So first year, second semester.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I almost quit. But then I had to continue my studies, finish engineering. And in engineering, also, it was a beautiful experience. Not the easiest of experience, but it was a beautiful experience.
True.
I quit engineering purely because not that I was a bad engineer, but I was a better coach. So I'd found my ikigai in coaching. I'm
Mm-hmm.
basically working with people. So it was also a journey that took its own self. And at my previous organization, if you called my name, I don't think I would have responded. I would still responded to Pungi and not Sunil.
Yeah.
And I'd also be not known for what software I was developing, but I'd always be known for, oh, this guy who does volunteering. Oh, that's the guy Pungi is, right? So that was always the space where I've always worked with people and impact first.
Mm-hmm.
And that very easily was a transition into this. And engineering so happened because, yeah, to a lot of us, engineering was the only way forward. And I
Right.
knew I cannot cut cockroaches and I'm afraid of the sight of blood. So that rules out doctors. So there's, and
Right.
this is kind of how it was.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting. So I was like, then how did you get into this coaching world? Because, it's very rare that for someone who is used to, the corporate world and, well, the so-called prestige and the so-called, whatever the social kind of, attention that you get. So with all that, how did this happen and what made you
Oh.
move and when did this happen?
So when did this happen? It was 2 years ago. So 2.5 years ago. And it felt the most natural thing in life to do. And it felt as if, the water from a river is actually merging into a larger river and reaching the ocean. So I'm a poet, so I will always give you these poetic and metaphorical answers. So engineering, as soon as I finished, I got my campus recruitment. I went in the first honeymoon period of 6 months. Oh, wow, free coffee,
Yeah, true.
breakfast on the house. Oh, wow, they've given you a new bag, all that excitement. Quickly drained because I was replacing a 30-year experienced, or he had 30 years of experience there as an individual. He was a German guy, PhD in Germany, and he moved on. I jumped in. I think it was all 7 layers of Dante's Fury at one place, right? So it was crazy, and I had this fierce desire to prove myself that I am the best. I am here because of a reason. I'm not here just because some random interviewer put me there. The first 3.5 years was mad. I had a series of burnouts. The only thing that saved me was possibly volunteering and this poetry madness. Was the only thing that saved me across that space. So I took a career break
Mm-hmm.
in 2018-19.
Okay.
I call it my father pregnancy, right? So it's a paternity break of 9 months that I took. I wrote about two or three books in those areas, worked freelance. That was
Okay.
my first taste of blood on how it is outside of IT,
Mm-hmm.
outside of the software sector.
Yeah.
The plush, AC space in software, and suddenly you're now going back into something you have to fight for yourself. Really have to get it out there.
True.
Things are not as easy as it sounds. So, but it felt like the most natural aspect. Then I had to go back to office because I had a 1 year sabbatical. So I went back in 9 months.
Mm.
And then I decided saying I'll save money and put a little bit of corpus and jump out of corporate. Then came COVID. COVID actually changed the game
Yeah.
completely. So until then, I was a software guy, I was a poet, and possibly my relationship with volunteering were three aspects I was known for.
Mm-hmm.
COVID introduced me to the rest of the world
Okay.
inside my big organization as part of a global MNC. And I had then, through my volunteering, set up networks in Germany, set up networks in the US, Mexico, Turkey, Japan, China. Uh, Everywhere else, I knew somebody, and we were, basically like a bigger band of brothers and sisters, and we are trying to build a culture across the organization. And that slowly introduced me to people, impact, and a larger circle. It was already there, but then
Mm-hmm.
this made it a lot more evident. And I got more and more confident with the number of people that I was meeting. And
Okay.
they never told me that you're a 30-year-old or a 29-year-old guy, as a software guy, why are you here? Nobody asked me that.
Right.
Everybody welcomed me, in fact, and said, oh, whatever you've had as an experience is something we would love to have. Can you share your experience?
Mm-hmm.
I right, left, center. I shared my experience, got people in, people were inspired. We did something together.
Yeah.
In a space of 1 year, me and six others built a team of 2,000 people who are talking about climate change and how they can actually actively work on it individually, collectively, and as a company. So those things moved slowly into people, and like a lot of corporates do, I said I'm done with software. I don't want to take software. I want to work full time. And then there we had the differences in terms of me being a part of HR and stuff like that. So that 1 year journey happened. I moved around in different organizations here, moved different topics.
Yeah.
And then at some point I said, oh, enough's enough. I don't think I'm getting what I'm getting. Until then, coaching in my life had never entered.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
only entered in my life the 1 week before I actually closed my corporate career and got into freelance or, completely into my own business.
Mm-hmm.
1 week Delta came into play. The August 1st, we had our first in-person training or an actual live session of what is coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And it was falling in love all over again, because I was sitting with people looking at transformation one to one and getting paid for it. So
True, true, true.
and that continues to be a beautiful experience. There's no second questions on it. So
Mm-hmm.
it is the most natural thing for me to jump into this, and I found myself more resonating with coaching than I was doing with software. So it is never that it is not possible from my end. It is bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
It is just that I was better at something else, and I'd rather something
Right.
that I'm better at, and I get a lot more satisfaction than anything else.
Right. So what about on the personal front that how did your family receive this? Because like your
Now,
family and you would have been like used to one particular set amount of income every month, and there might have been a lot of questions like why, how we're going to manage, and why are you doing this, and when, and how are we going to put things together, and uh,
yeah, yeah,
how
no, I
was it?
think that is true. That was true. It was an experience. It was a journey. Not without its 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock night conversations, right? Me and my mom sitting next to each other and like talking, saying, "Hey, what are you doing to do?"
Yeah.
So a little brief background from my history is that my father he passed away when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, it's been mom's been my pillar of strength for the entire family. And when I first took my sabbatical, which was a career break,
Mm-hmm.
I think she had already knew that this guy has other plans, and I take after my father quite well, and he was into multiple things and good at all of those multiple things.
Yeah.
And business was something that he was doing, so for me it was also coming as a very natural thing, but it was not an accepted truth in the
Mm-hmm.
family, because we need money at the end of the month was a standard concern for every household. So
Yeah.
that was how it was. The space of convincing was my passion, my unrelenting, dedication and determination to make things work. I remember telling Amma at 3 o'clock in the night this thing that you are worried about your son for 100, you have 100 worries for your son, that, how will he do it? What will he do? Blah, blah, blah. Sunil is worried for Sunil possibly 1,000 times that, because I want this to make it happen. And I'll make sure everything in my power is done so that I run the show. And that 9 months of sabbatical that I take in 2019, I think she had a trailer of it saying this fellow's not doing it for the sake of just doing it. He means business. He is
Mhm.
serious about it. And then because I told you that the 1 year that I had spoken about was not the easiest. When I asked for saying a complete change into HR roles,
Yeah.
she came and told me one day saying, if you want to quit the company, quit. We'll figure
Mhm.
out the rest of the way. Right. So
Right. Nice.
that confidence, I think, was you don't need anything else after that. That kind of a confidence that comes from the household. And
Mhm.
after that, we've been able to figure out it's not that I had a lot of money even when I quit or even when I took a sabbatical. I possibly always have been a minimalistic guy, so I know my understanding of what comes with money. But I think I very strongly feel that it's a space where you grow with time, and money will come.
Mhm.
So it's about being true to what my passion is and what my interest is. And that way, it was very easy at some point, but also very tough socially, because my family is one small core
Right.
group.
Yes.
But everywhere else, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And to that, I thank COVID, because I said I'm not going out everywhere every day, because I sit at home and most of my work is at home. So a lot of people assume that I'm still working in an organization. So that's
Right.
one.
Yeah,
The
I think
second
COVID
aspect
changed that.
was
Yeah.
COVID changed that. So work from home is not a big thing anymore. So
Yeah.
that was one. The other aspect is, I think when I talk to people, I come across as a very confident guy who knows his business. And I think their major concern is what's going to happen to Sunil and what's going to happen to my mom. Like, is he a responsible guy? And I've not given anything as a story to them that says I'm an irresponsible guy. In fact, I go and tell them, why can't you connect me to your friends? And my standard response to relatives has been, if you don't help, I'm not bothered. But don't sabotage and don't put questions on my this thing. And I've been very vocal about it. Uh, I need you to help. Don't ask me why. The decision has been taken. There's never a second guess of why I'm doing it. The only aspect where you have given a choice in this matter is, can you help me succeed and get it better? If not,
Right.
don't even entertain the conversation.
True, true,
And
true.
some of them have been really hurt and being pissed by that, but I'm said, not my monkey, not my circus.
Absolutely. So, how did this podcast thing happen? Because I'm very curious to know about that also. Because
So podcast was a very interesting idea. So in my previous organization, one of the things that was happening during COVID was something called as a lunch roulette. So you are randomly matched with somebody across the world. So you're part of an Excel sheet, and then
mm,
you say, "I'm interested to meet somebody outside the world," and through that, and building some of these, I'd anyway gotten in touch with 600 to 700 people just through the roulette.
nice.
Right. So, and every time I spoke, because we're not in the same organizational structure, but typically globally we're in the same organization, we always ended up talking about each other, passion, etc., etc., etc. And
Yeah,
we were talking about who we are as an individual, not the work that we do.
yeah.
And one of the first sparks was a guy who I met, Harold. Harold was in the organization for 50 years. So he
Oh,
had joined as a 15-year-old intern,
hmm,
did his engineering there, got into the manufacturing sector and really risen up the ranks.
yeah.
And Harold and I had a crazy conversation. And I said, Harold, do you want to make this as a podcast? And he said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And that was the first spark of something that happened inside Bosch.
Okay.
And then also, this is in COVID peak. Somebody says, why don't you interview people who have survived COVID?
Okay.
They've
Yeah.
had this is second wave of COVID, not first wave of
Hmm,
COVID. So they've
hmm.
they've actually been through hell, and we need somebody who has the nuance and the emotional intelligence to hold that very delicate topic, but
Yeah.
still make it informative as well as yeah, non-invasive with people. And I did about five, six podcasts of people who had actually gone through wave two COVID and survived and shared some of these really gripping tales. It was very, very interesting to do that. And then somebody said, Sunil, why don't you do it outside the organization? Because if at any point of time, if you leave the organization, the podcast that you've done will remain in the organization. You have no say over it.
You're right.
So that was the first deal of saying, let me start something outside. And there's this guy called Santosh, and Santosh
Hmm,
said, do it outside. And I said, okay, only if you are a podcast guest. And so that was the deal. So he was podcast guest number three by
hmm.
the time he came. But then he did live up to his promise, and I got my first podcast. So now my podcast is about 84 episodes strong.
Nice, nice. So your channel name, of course, I will mention in the description for people who
Yes,
are interested to watch these podcasts.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's just the idea was simply to ask people saying, "Who are you?" and uh,
Right.
and then the rest of the conversation flowed. And I never wrote down questions and said, "Oh, this question I'll ask you." 45 minutes, 1 hour of episode, just raw as is, no editing, and that is how it ended up.
Absolutely, because that's the thing that works. And if you have noticed, that is exactly what we're doing even now. This is like nobody has written anything, nobody's prepared for anything. Just shoot questions, and whatever comes to mind at
Absolutely.
that point, and whatever flows, that is something that will be
Absolutely.
remembered, and that will probably work the best. And people are definitely interested in knowing other people's journeys, so they try to take off some inspiration from there, and many things.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And it's joyful. I think that's where I pass it, and it's one single sentence. It's joy to meet people.
Exactly, exactly. And if I have to ask you about, your personal life, for
Hmm.
example, you said your mom is with you. So who else is in your family? And
So yeah, right now I am still looking to find my the person of my dreams so that I can stop writing love poems and dedicate everything to her. So that search is ongoing
Mhm.
in terms of who I am looking for as a life partner. But I am filled with interesting people in my life. My brother-in-law is a cinematographer. He is a civil engineer turned cinematographer.
Okay.
My mom's a jack of all, possibly master of a few.
Hmm.
She's into multiple things. She takes tuition. She's been a kindergarten teacher. She's been into art, all types of paintings, terracotta. I think you name it, she's done it. Glass paintings, kasuti, everything has been done in the house. And basically, yeah, my sister's possibly the only one who studied something and continues to work in the same this thing. So she did her biomedical, and then she continues in the whole aspect of that. So this is a very small core. So my grandparents, they passed on during COVID, not due to COVID, but during COVID.
Mm.
Oh, my grandpa was 93, and possibly the last 6 months of his life is the only time he actually spent as a like last 3 months or even just below that was what he spent not doing his exercise, not doing his walking, not washing his own clothes.
Wow.
He was an amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
And my granny was also a steel lady, right? So she was also crazy, and man, she cooked well. So if at all I had to, if I'm grateful for something, and I've always had people who've been fantastic cooks in the house.
Wow.
My sister's a great cook. My mom's a great. My granny is greater. Always grannies will always be great. My great granny was the best. I've only eaten one of those sweets that she'd made at home.
Mm-hmm.
In for people outside of Karnataka, it's called sakre holge.
Yeah.
So that's a table. So I was 6 years old when I ate that, and I think if I still compare it to her standards, so even if I eat it outside, I'm like, this is not what Aji was making.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's there, and my mom's mom is my favorite of all people. So
Mm.
she's a fantastic storyteller, and
Mm.
all of my story writing is possibly inspired by her,
Sure.
and
Okay.
uh, very very genuine, very simple, very humble.
Mm.
All the value systems that I subscribe to, a lot of them have come from her.
Okay.
Mostly imbibing it her, seeing her.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think so. Whenever you go to my Ajji's house, you always end up with a full belly and great stories. Then you come outside.
That's perfect. That's actually perfect. So now, if I have to ask, you said you're trying to find a match for yourself and trying to get into a relationship. So has there been any resistances, like because the girls of late have like a lot of expectations and they want somebody with a stable income and stable job and the corporate employee or whatever. So have you faced any kind of resistance with these kinds?
I think I would say, this is a separate stand-up comedy special that you're inviting with this question, right? So, I've had profiles listed out saying I need somebody who studied ICSE syllabus, and only then I am looking to get interested.
Okay.
Um, and mostly a lot of them come with height issues. I don't know what's the deal with that
Mm.
saying uh, same height, we're not okay with it. And I think it's not yet reached that filtering stage of even saying, oh, this is it with regards to okay, we're okay with it, and all that. Mostly in an individual, say if I've now looked at it from a dating point of view, from say an arranged marriage to this particular place, somehow I feel very strongly that I am a little old school guy, and that for me is also a problem. So, in terms of my value systems of no alcohol, no smoking, some of those. So maybe I will redact all of this after I get married, because I'm like, these things have not been shared by her, and she'll be like, no, no, don't ask anything, don't do anything controversial. But otherwise, I think not a resistance per se. I think I've never seen resistance to something like this. Cautious, yes, because people want to be cautious with who they are getting into a relationship with. Uh, but I think, yeah, I think my charm is good enough that I'm able to convince them to look at me as the individual and not look at my roles.
Right.
Because I can, with whatever I am looking at in the next 2 3 years, this is going to be the booming business across the country and across the world, and so money is going to be not a problem. And I think also to a large extent, people have got to a point where they like to be with themselves most of the time, and possibly get into a relationship only when they're 100% sure.
Yeah.
And that 100% surety to a lot of places is not coming. And they have again restrictions of not being part of the uh, bride's family, the groom's family, something or
Yeah.
the other is
True,
there.
true.
There are some frictions, there are some interesting conversations. So I've been privy to some very interesting conversations as a coach, as an individual. And I think I am looking for somebody who resonates with me, and that is what I'm looking at. And so I have not found something. And per se, I think if at all my mom had been asked this question, she'd say the resistance is me.
Right. Right.
Because like I need somebody who matches my energies, and that all the eccentricities that I come with. That's the only thing, and she being vegetarian. So these are the only requirements there are. So if somebody is listening, you can always reach out.
You're turning the podcast into a matrimonial ad now. Okay. Right. Right.
So that's how it is.
All right. So, Sunil, do you want to share, any experience that you've had as a coach or as a, how do I say, as in the corporate world or as a poet, any random experience that has, like left an impact with you and you are just not able to forget or get out of it? Is there anything like that?
Absolutely, a lot of them. So as a poet, I think one of the experience that I still remember was somebody had basically a friend's friend had lost his not daughter, so sister.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was about 3 months since she had passed on, and all of us are in say at that time early 20s, late 20s maximum.
Yeah.
And he had asked me to write a descriptive poem about her. 2 or 3 lines was what was given.
Okay.
And me being me, I had written something, and apparently it was 100% of who she was, right? And then that person had written a message that I now currently don't have because of my phone crash and all that. But man, that had made me cry. I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been so moved by that, he'd actually framed that and kept it somewhere. So that was one experience. And then poetry has moved so many people. I've gotten in touch with some of the best in the business. And I think for me, that one idea that with the poem I can actually change lives. I think that was the biggest space for me. I connected with people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I made a little bit of money. I think yes, it has happened. But most of all, I started to write for charity in early COVID, and that was a beautiful experience. And close to about 3 lakhs was generated across a year and a half, purely through writing. And I said I will charge you for a subscription of 6 months, as minimal as 500,000 rupees, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the money gets routed to charities. There was. And one of those guys was whoever got a scholarship was actually a very young kid from Tumkur, in and around Tumkur.
Mm-hmm.
And Tumkur is a city, a town that's
Yeah.
there in very near Bangalore. So that's where I was born. So there's also that space of me. This is place where I was born. He had stuttering problem, so he could not even in a single sentence utter his name. So I had to like talk to him for 30 minutes,
Right.
and then we basically helped him with a scholarship fund, and 10,000 was our limit, saying with that's the maximum we'll pay,
Mm.
and we paid 10,000. 2 years down the line, he calls us saying he is the topper of the college. It's about 60, 70 people there, topper of the
Mm.
college. And he spoke to me with such great confidence, even though still stuttering, even though still like that. And his final statement was, if we had not got that scholarship at that point of time, I'd be a house help or a random day job laborer. Now I have a job in XYZ company right out of college.
Okay.
And that for me was an experience saying, hey, you know what, we're doing actually something crazy. And like that, those stories are, I think volunteering podcast is also a separate podcast, right? So that was another beautiful experience. And there was one, I think, oh, as a volunteer, this is one of those absolutely favorite experiences. And what got me into volunteering was also like this. First time volunteering, we go and say, what's your name, where are you from, the
Yes.
usual drill. And there's one kid who stands up, one girl who stands up, and she does not talk. And I'm like, hey, what's happening? So I just stay with her and say, it's okay, it's okay, talk, don't worry, nobody's going to laugh at you. And
Mm.
at that point, she starts crying.
Right.
And the next girl who is sitting next to her, this is happening in MG Road. Beyond MG Road, there's a
Mm-hmm.
long slum. And in one of those schools, this is what was happened in early 2018 or 17.
Okay.
And the girl next to her where stands up and says, "This girl can't speak. She's deaf and dumb."
Oh, okay.
And I think at that point it was the biggest shock for me, saying, "Oh,
Right.
wow!" And that was the spark to create a campaign of volunteering that spanned 5 years, continues to be as a personal social responsibility. And so that point, I after that I came to my office and said we have to do something.
Mm.
And for her to stop crying, all we had to do was offer a chocolate and say, write down what your name is and what this is. And, the person next to her read it and she was smiling all around. And I went out of the class after that. But I think that as an element has stayed throughout. It's never changed. And so many stories on volunteering.
Nice, nice. So if I have to say any takeaway for the youngsters, who are thinking, and is there money in this kind of coaching? Is there money in writing? Is there money everywhere else? Like there are so many aspects now. I think kids these days are quite confused, or I don't know, they're focused in a rather different way. They are like, they just learn everything at the surface. There's no deeper knowledge of anything. That's what I have noticed. But if there is any takeoff from this podcast for such youngsters, who are thinking about this as a career, who are thinking about, if they should get into the corporate world, if they should do something else. So what is your advice for them?
Coaches don't give advice, but Sunil is giving you advice. So basically, the deal is that skill set, invest on your skill set.
Right.
In one single anchoring sentence, that is it. Because your skill set will take you forward. And as a Brahmin kid, we've always been told invest in your education. That's the only thing that's going to survive, help you survive. And I think that is yes, but also the education that life gives you. I think that there's nothing short of that.
Absolutely.
And I think definitely skill set. Second is networking, and three is building on your strengths. So there are three major points that people can take away from it.
Mhm.
So until I had done my content writing, I'd done writing for about 7 years. Then I took that career break. I did about 25 websites that I worked with
Mhm.
as a freelance guy. And all of those I was able to finish in 2 days purely because I had written for 7 years.
Right.
It was not a 1 day thing, a 2 day thing. So my skill set to that space was like instantly entering. So if your skill set is good, nothing matters.
Yeah, I think it's more of,
Yeah.
consistency in what they actually do. So,
Consistency is beautifully put. Yeah, I think that skill set over a period of time,
yeah.
doing the same thing over and over again, smaller improvements over a period of time. And at some point, you are playing a Rahul Dravid innings in life, and you're not playing a swashbuckling 2 day, 3 day, sorry, two ball, three ball
Yes.
century or something like that. You are playing a Rahul Dravid innings in life,
Right.
and you can be a multi-potentialite. Just because you're good at two things does not mean that you should only be working on one thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can be working on multiple things, but make sure that you're focused on one thing that you're doing at that particular point of time, and then the rest is easy. And if at all you find any problems, you can always reach out to me.
Absolutely. And thank you, Sunil, so much for being with us today and sharing your
Absolutely,
experiences and all the
absolutely,
advice that you have given the younger kids. And it's really amazing to have
absolutely.
you here. Thank you.
Absolutely true, and full acknowledgements and thanks to you as well. So we are doing this podcast after literally being 1 day, related or conversing with each
True.
other,
Absolutely.
and I think amazing to just sit across you and answer some of these very interesting questions.
Right.
And yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to inspire more people, more poets, more dreamers like all of us.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Sunil.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that was Sunil Sathyendra for you on Asamanya Ordinary People Inordinate Journey. What an inordinate journey Sunil Sathyendra had. So next week we're going to come back with another Asamanya here, right here on YouTube for you with more interesting stories and more things to learn and more takeoffs from this podcast. I'm your host and those Smita Iyengar signing off for today. Don't forget to subscribe the channel. Wait up here for more interesting stories. Till then, bye.